a transformation no one could reverse. The wrench slipped from Sam's grease-covered fingers and slammed onto the concrete with a sharp metallic crack. He let out a tired sigh, wiping sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand, only spreading another streak of oil across his face. The garage smelled like scorched rubber, engine oil, and countless years of hard work soaked into the walls. He'd spent 15 years in the shop, and every corner felt as familiar as home. "You heading out?" Marcus shouted from beneath a truck balanced on the hydraulic lift.
"Yeah."
"Picking up those parts in Denver?" "I'll be back Tuesday." Sam pulled his faded denim jacket from the wall hook. The fabric had lost most of its color over the years, much like the routine he'd been living. Outside, the afternoon sun beat down on the highway. His aging pickup roared to life, while an old country station crackled through the worn speakers. Mile after mile slipped by as mountains faded into endless plains. Traffic became heavier the closer he got to the city. Then everything changed. A massive semi-truck several cars ahead suddenly lurched sideways. "Come on." Sam stomped on the brake pedal. The trailer jackknifed across the highway, steel screaming against pavement as vehicles scattered in every direction. Acting purely on instinct, Sam jerked the steering wheel toward the shoulder. His pickup skidded wildly over loose gravel, barely avoiding the collision. The trailer doors exploded open. Large industrial barrels bounced across the road like oversized bowling balls. One slammed into the concrete divider. It burst instantly. A glowing green vapor erupted from the shattered container, spreading unnaturally fast across the highway. It rolled over the pavement like living fog before engulfing Sam's truck. Within seconds, the strange gas seeped through the air vents. A harsh metallic taste filled his mouth. His throat burned. His eyes watered uncontrollably. His skin erupted with an intense tingling sensation that felt almost electric. Coughing violently, Sam stumbled out of the cab and collapsed onto the roadside, desperate for clean air. The sound of approaching sirens echoed through the chaos. Emergency vehicles surrounded the accident within minutes. Firefighters, paramedics, and hazmat crews rushed across the highway while workers in sealed protective suits contained the leaking barrels. The truck driver, visibly shaken, kept apologizing through panicked breaths, explaining that the cargo was some kind of experimental chemical shipment. Sam hardly heard a word. A paramedic examined him carefully before shining a flashlight into his eyes. "Everything looks normal for now," she said. "But if you notice anything unusual over the next few days, call this number immediately." Sam accepted the card with an absent nod. Even hours later, driving home with every window rolled down, the strange metallic smell refused to leave him. A faint tingling continued crawling beneath his skin, as though static electricity had settled inside his body. Completely exhausted, he reached his small house on Maple Street, kicked off his boots, and collapsed into bed without even turning on the television. The next morning, something felt off. The bedsheets irritated his skin. Every movement felt strangely sensitive. He splashed cold water across his face before staring into the bathroom mirror. He looked pale, tired, but otherwise normal. At least at first glance. Back at the garage, nothing seemed to fit quite right. His tools felt awkward in his hands. Simple repairs suddenly required extra effort. Even his coveralls hung differently, looser around his shoulders than they ever had before. Marcus noticed immediately. "You okay?" he asked during lunch. "You look terrible." "Probably that chemical spill," Sam replied. "Still don't feel right. You ought to see a doctor." Sam simply shrugged. He'd spent most of his life fixing problems himself. Visiting doctors was never his first instinct. Still, this didn't feel like an ordinary illness. His boots suddenly seemed a size too large. His shoulders carried an unfamiliar ache. Something inside him felt wrong in ways he couldn't explain. By Tuesday morning, denying it was impossible. Standing beside the bedroom window, Sam stared at his hands. They looked noticeably slimmer. The thick calluses built from years of wrenching engines had softened almost overnight. While shaving, he noticed the angles of his face no longer felt the same beneath the razor. His jaw seemed smoother, less defined. With growing unease, he stepped onto the bathroom scale. 10 pounds.
Gone.
In a single night, his heartbeat quickened. He called the garage, claiming he was too sick to come in. Even his own voice sounded strangely different, lighter than before. After hanging up, he slowly walked toward the full-length mirror. The reflection stole his breath. This wasn't weight loss. His entire body was changing. Rapidly, his shoulders narrowed. His waist tightened. His hips slowly broadened. The solid muscle earned through years of physical labor seemed to melt away, leaving softer curves in its place. Sam stood frozen, unable to look away as panic rose inside him. Something was transforming him, and it wasn't slowing down. This couldn't be happening. Nothing about it made sense. And whatever was happening wasn't slowing down. The emergency contact the paramedic had handed him turned out to be useless. Every call ended the same way, a lifeless voicemail greeting followed by silence. Sam left one message, then another, then a third, each more desperate than the last. No one ever called back. Waiting was no longer an option. He grabbed his truck keys and headed straight for the hospital, gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. Every bump in the road reminded him something inside his body no longer felt right. Even the seatbelt rested across his chest differently, pressing against him in unfamiliar ways. He tried not to think about it. Dr. Harrison couldn't ignore it. The physician reviewed page after page of laboratory results before removing his glasses in stunned silence. "Sam," he finally said, "I've never seen anything like this." Sam leaned forward. "What does that mean?" "Your hormone levels have completely reversed. Testosterone has dropped to almost nothing, while estrogen is extraordinarily high. It's as though your endocrine system has been rewritten." The words settled like stones in a room. "Can you stop it?" Sam asked quietly. The doctor hesitated. "I honestly don't know what's causing this. You need specialists, people with resources we don't have here. Go to Denver. As soon as possible." But by then, time had already run out. Wednesday arrived, and the transformation accelerated beyond anything imaginable. Standing before the bathroom mirror, Sam watched his own reflection change almost from hour to hour. His facial features gradually softened. His cheekbones became more pronounced. His lips looked fuller. Each shower carried away handfuls of body hair that spiraled toward the drain. Then came the change he could no longer deny. His chest began to develop. Every shirt stretched tighter across the front, forcing him to hunch instinctively whenever he walked. There was no pretending anymore. Thursday morning delivered another cruel reminder. None of his clothes fit. His jeans slipped down no matter how tightly he fastened his belt. Button-up work shirts strained awkwardly across his chest. Even his underwear felt completely wrong, uncomfortable in ways that left him flushed with embarrassment. His phone buzzed across the kitchen counter.
Marcus.
Sam stared at the screen until it stopped ringing. How could he possibly explain any of this? By Thursday evening, the changes finally slowed. He stood silently before the mirror. The stranger staring back looked nothing like the mechanic who had left for Denver only days earlier. She was shorter. Her figure had softened into gentle curves. Long blonde hair rested against her shoulders. Her face belonged to someone entirely different. Only the eyes remained unmistakably his. With trembling fingers, he reached toward the reflection. Sam. The name sounded distant, almost wrong. After a long pause, another name slipped out. Samantha. It wasn't certainty, just something to hold on to while everything else disappeared. Friday forced reality back into focus. Rent still had to be paid. Bills continued arriving. Sooner or later, he would have to leave the house. Opening his closet only made the situation worse. Nothing inside belonged to the person he had become. After nearly an hour of frustration, he pulled on an oversized hoodie, lowered the hood over his face, and drove nearly an hour away to a Walmart where nobody would recognize him. Walking into the women's clothing department felt like entering an unfamiliar country. An employee smiled politely. "Can I help you find your size?" Sam froze. His mind raced before he awkwardly replied, "I'm shopping for my sister." The excuse sounded terrible even to him. Inside the fitting room, Confusion quickly turned into frustration. Jeans that fit comfortably around his hips were far too long. Some shirts fit across the shoulders, but hung awkwardly elsewhere. Choosing underwear felt impossibly complicated. More than once he found himself staring at the labels without understanding what any of them meant. Eventually, he settled on simple necessities. Basic blue jeans, plain t-shirts, comfortable sports bras, a few packs of underwear chosen mostly by guesswork. He paid with cash, avoided eye contact, and hurried back to the truck. At home, changing into the new clothes felt strangely surreal. The sports bra was unfamiliar, yet immediately practical. The jeans finally fit. The soft navy shirt brushed against skin that seemed unusually sensitive. He lifted his eyes toward the bedroom mirror. A young blonde woman looked back at him. The clothing itself wasn't remarkable. Everything else was. The weekend disappeared in near silence. Sam rarely left the house. Every day became another lesson. His balance had changed. His posture felt unfamiliar. Even speaking required practice as he struggled to adapt to a voice that no longer sounded like his own. Calls went unanswered. Knocks at the front door were ignored. But Monday arrived whether he was ready or not. He parked outside the garage and watched Marcus unlock the shop just as he had every morning for years. Everything looked exactly the same. Except him. Taking a deep breath, Sam climbed out of the truck and walked toward the entrance. Marcus glanced up. His expression turned politely confused. "Can I help you, ma'am?" The words hit harder than expected. Sam swallowed. "It's me, Sam." Marcus blinked. The wrench in his hand slipped loose and clattered onto the concrete.
No.
He shook his head. "That's not funny. I'm serious." Sam pulled out his driver's license with trembling fingers. The photograph showed the man he used to be. The person holding it was someone else entirely. "I know how impossible this sounds," Sam said quietly. "I've been to the hospital. Even the doctors can't explain what happened. But I'm still the same person." Marcus stared at her for a long moment before his expression turned cold. "This has to be some kind of prank." "It isn't. I think you should leave." Sam's stomach sank. "I just want to work," she said quietly. "I still know every engine in this garage. I can do everything I could before." Marcus folded his arms. "You honestly expect me to pretend this is normal? What happens when customers walk in? What am I supposed to tell them?" Each word landed harder than the last. They had spent 8 years working side by side. 8 years of fixing engines, sharing coffee before sunrise, and trusting each other without question. "I'm still Sam." Marcus slowly shook his head. "The man I hired was Sam." His voice became flat. "I don't know who you are now, but you aren't him." There was nothing left to say. Sam turned without another word and walked back toward her truck, refusing to let him see the tears building in her eyes. Only after closing the driver's door did she finally allow herself to breathe. The town suddenly felt unfamiliar. Every road carried memories she no longer knew how to face. She drove past the little diner where she'd ordered breakfast every Tuesday morning. Past the hardware store where Tom always knocked a few dollars off her purchases without saying a word. Past the bank where Linda never failed to greet her with a smile. Places that had once felt welcoming now felt like stages, waiting for uncomfortable questions. If Marcus couldn't accept what had happened, why would anyone else? Back inside the small house on Maple Street, Sam spread her bills across the kitchen table. The numbers refused to add up. Her paycheck had stopped. The expenses hadn't. Across the room, her framed mechanic's certificate hung on the wall. Samuel Morrison. The name looked like it belonged to someone she'd once known rather than herself. Her phone suddenly rang. She froze. She had ignored every call since the accident, but there was one conversation she couldn't postpone forever. She answered. "Sam?" Relief immediately filled her mother's voice. "Oh, thank goodness."
"We've been worried sick."
Marcus called. He said you never came back to work, and someone mentioned there's been a young woman staying at your house. Sam closed her eyes. "Mom, I need both you and Dad to come over." A brief silence followed. "Are you hurt?" her mother asked.
"No."
"Are you sick? Please, just come." Less than an hour later, their pickup rolled into the driveway. From the living room window, Sam watched them climb out. Everything about them felt comfortingly familiar. Her mother carried a casserole dish, as though a home-cooked meal could somehow solve whatever was wrong. Her father followed behind, quiet as always, his face impossible to read. The doorbell echoed through the house. Sam hesitated before opening the door. Both parents looked at the young blonde woman standing before them. Confusion quickly crossed their faces. Then, uncertainty. "Can we help you?" her father asked politely. Sam struggled to find her voice. "It's me." Neither of them reacted. "It's Sam." Her mother nearly dropped the casserole. Only her father catching it at the last second kept it from shattering on the porch. Neither of them spoke. "This isn't funny," her mother whispered. "I know." Sam stepped aside. "Please come in. I'll explain everything." The living room remained painfully quiet as Sam recounted every detail. The highway accident, the glowing green chemical, the hospital examination, the changes that had happened day after day. She placed Dr. Harrison's medical reports on the coffee table. She showed them photographs documenting the transformation. Finally, she handed over her driver's license. The picture showed the son they remembered. The woman sitting before them did not. Her father stared silently at the documents. His expression hardened with every passing minute. Her mother gripped her purse so tightly her knuckles turned pale. Finally, her father broke the silence.
No.
His voice carried quiet anger. "People don't just wake up as someone else." "I know how it sounds," Sam replied. "This isn't how the world works," he continued. "I didn't ask for this," Sam said, fighting to keep her composure. "Then don't accept it." His words came instantly. "Fight it." She looked at him in disbelief.
How?
Her voice cracked. "Tell me how I'm supposed to fight my own body. Every doctor I've seen says they don't understand what's happening. This wasn't my choice." Her mother finally spoke, her voice softer, but filled with sadness. "What are we supposed to do now?" She looked at Sam with tearful eyes. "Act like our son never existed? Pretend this is all somehow normal?" Sam felt her chest tighten. "I don't expect you to understand everything." She swallowed hard. "I just hoped you'd still love me." The room fell silent. After several long seconds, her father slowly stood. "We love the son we raised," he said quietly. His eyes lingered on the woman before him. "But right now—" He struggled to finish the sentence. "I don't know who I'm looking at." Tears gathered in her mother's eyes.
She wanted to say something. Anything.
But no words came. A few minutes later, they were gone. The front door clicked shut, and the silence that followed felt heavier than before. The casserole dish her mother had brought remained untouched on the kitchen counter, a quiet reminder that love alone hadn't been enough to bridge the distance between them. The weeks that followed blended into one another. Sam rarely left the house unless she absolutely had to. When she did, she drove to neighboring towns where strangers wouldn't recognize her face or remember the man she used to be. Her savings account shrank a little more each week. Then the letters arrived. One instructed her to return her work keys. Another requested her uniforms. The final envelope officially ended her employment. Every page felt colder than the last. Finding another job proved nearly impossible. No employer openly admitted why they weren't interested. They simply thanked her for applying and never called back. Meanwhile, rumors spread through town faster than facts ever could. Some insisted Sam had been hiding secrets for years. Others claimed the transformation was punishment for things she'd supposedly done. The truth sounded so impossible that people invented stories they found easier to believe. Nearly a month after the accident, Sam found herself sitting across from Dr. Harrison once again. The doctor looked exhausted. "I've contacted specialists across the country," he said quietly. "I've reviewed every medical journal I could find."
He sighed.
"I've found nothing remotely similar." Sam leaned forward. "And the chemical company? They deny any responsibility." He slid a folder across the desk. "They're describing it as an unexplained biological mutation unrelated to the spill." A bitter laugh escaped her. "Convenient. I'm afraid they're distancing themselves from the incident." Sam lowered her eyes. "So that's it? No treatment?" No way to reverse this? Dr. Harrison hesitated before answering. I'm sorry, he spoke gently. Everything we've observed suggests the changes are stable. As far as medicine can tell, they're permanent.
Permanent.
The word echoed in her thoughts long after she left the hospital. Back home, the mirror had become an unavoidable ritual. Every morning she stood before it, hoping reality had somehow corrected itself overnight. It never had. Her blonde hair now reached well past her shoulders. She tried cutting it once, hoping the familiar style might make her reflection feel more recognizable. Instead, it only reminded her how much everything else had changed. Even ordinary errands required careful planning. She shopped late at night whenever possible. Almost empty parking lots. Nearly deserted aisles. Self-checkout. Anything that reduced the chance of uncomfortable conversations. One afternoon, however, timing worked against her. The refrigerator was empty. Waiting wasn't an option. She pulled on her usual outfit, a black t-shirt and blue jeans, took a steadying breath, and headed to the grocery store. The place was crowded. She kept her eyes lowered while moving quickly through the aisles. Then she heard a voice. Samantha? Her entire body froze. She slowly turned. Rachel. Someone she hadn't seen since high school. She looked almost exactly as Sam remembered, confident, polished, and effortlessly composed. Years ago, they had gone on a few dates before quietly realizing they wanted different things. No, Sam replied almost instinctively. You've mistaken me for someone else. Rachel stepped closer. She studied Sam's face for several seconds. Recognition slowly replaced confusion. Oh my God. She lowered her voice. Sam? Sam glanced around nervously. Please. I don't want everyone staring. Rachel's expression softened. I heard people talking, she admitted. I thought they were making it up. It's complicated. Sam forced a weak smile. The doctors don't even understand it. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Rachel asked the simplest question imaginable. How are you doing? Sam opened her mouth. Nothing came out at first. Then she quietly answered. I'm not. Rachel nodded with quiet understanding. Come have coffee with me. It wasn't a solution. It wasn't a miracle. But it was the first genuine kindness Sam had received from someone outside her family in a very long time. Healing arrived slowly after that. Not in dramatic moments. In small ones. Her mother began visiting more often. Each conversation lasted a little longer. Each visit carried a little less awkwardness than the one before. Trust slowly found its way back into the room. Her father took longer. Old habits refused to disappear overnight. Sometimes he stumbled over names. Sometimes he struggled to know what to say. But he kept showing up. He kept trying. And eventually, those quiet efforts mattered more than perfect words ever could. Life somehow continued moving forward. At the repair shop where Dan had given her a chance, Sam proved herself every single day. Her skill with engines had never disappeared. Neither had her work ethic. Month after month, Dan placed more responsibility in her hands. One day, he slid a folder across the desk. Inside was a partnership agreement. It wasn't just another job anymore. For the first time since everything had changed, she had built a future again. The new role fit her better than she ever expected. Managing the shop came naturally. She trained young mechanics with a patience she never possessed in the past, understanding firsthand that confidence wasn't built overnight. Every lesson she taught carried pieces of the journey she'd survived herself. Before long, the garage earned a reputation for more than excellent repairs.
People talked about Sam.
About the woman who could resurrect motorcycles everyone else had written off. The Steel Riders grew alongside the business, welcoming riders from neighboring towns and, eventually, from across the country. Some came for the motorcycles. Others came because they'd heard her story. 3 years passed. One quiet morning, Sam stood before the bathroom mirror, weaving her long blonde hair into a neat braid with practiced hands. The reflection staring back no longer felt unfamiliar. Time had softened what fear never could. The face in the mirror wasn't someone she was pretending to be anymore. It had simply become her. She slipped into a navy set of mechanic's coveralls tailored perfectly for her, tied the braid behind her shoulders, and headed to work. The garage buzzed with activity. Air tools rattled. Metal echoed against concrete. Conversations drifted across the service bays. A pair of apprentices worked nearby, while Sam focused on restoring a beautifully worn Indian motorcycle. Grease stained her fingers. A dark streak crossed one cheek. She barely noticed. There was something deeply satisfying about bringing broken machines back to life. "Boss." Tyler waved from the front office. "Someone's asking for you." Sam set her wrench aside and walked toward the reception area. A young woman stood nervously near the entrance, motorcycle helmet clutched tightly against her chest. "Are you Sam?" she asked quietly. "The one everyone talks about?" Years ago, that question would have reopened old wounds. Now it simply felt like another part of her story. "I am." The woman took a nervous breath. "My name's Emma." She hesitated. "I went through something similar." Sam's attention sharpened. "There was an accident at the laboratory where I work. Chemical exposure." Her voice trembled. "My doctor said you might understand." Sam gently motioned toward the office. "Come inside." For the next hour, Emma slowly pieced together her experience. The disbelief, the fear, friends who disappeared, family members who didn't know what to say. Every sentence echoed memories Sam knew all too well. Eventually, Emma looked up. "How do you survive something like this?"
She paused.
"How do you stop mourning the person you used to be?" Sam leaned back thoughtfully before answering. "I don't think I ever stopped being myself." Emma looked puzzled. "My appearance changed," Sam explained. "My body changed. But the things that mattered most didn't." She smiled faintly. "I still love motorcycles. I still enjoy rebuilding engines. I still laugh at terrible jokes. Those parts never disappeared." Emma listened quietly. "But your entire life changed." "It did." Sam nodded. "Some people walked away because they couldn't understand." She shrugged gently. "That was their choice. Other people stayed. And along the way, I found people I never would have met otherwise." She glanced toward the busy workshop outside the office window. "I never planned this life." Her smile became more certain. "But once I realized I couldn't change what happened, I stopped trying to live the life I'd lost. I started building the one I still had." Emma sat silently for several moments. When she finally stood to leave, something in her posture had changed. The fear hadn't vanished, but it no longer seemed quite as overwhelming. She walked out carrying more than a list of phone numbers and support contacts. She carried hope. That evening, the Steel Riders gathered for their weekly ride. Motorcycles lined the parking lot while laughter drifted through the evening air. Sam climbed onto the Harley-Davidson she'd proudly purchased the previous year. She tucked her braid beneath her riding jacket before fastening her helmet. Karen rolled alongside her bike. "Ready?" Sam answered with a twist of the throttle. The engine answered with a deep, confident rumble. Moments later, the group pulled onto the highway together. A long ribbon of headlights stretched across the open road beneath a sky painted in brilliant shades of orange, pink, and gold. The wind rushed past. The motorcycle responded to every movement with effortless precision. Out there, the questions no longer mattered. Neither did the whispers, nor the expectations of people who couldn't understand. There was only the road, the machine beneath her, and the quiet certainty that she finally belonged in her own life. What had once felt like the end of everything had slowly become the beginning of something entirely different. Not the future she once imagined, but one she had built with her own hands. As the highway curved ahead, Sam leaned naturally into the turn, not resisting the road, moving with it, finally at peace. Months became years, and the shop continued growing beyond anything she'd once believed possible. Customers came because the workmanship was exceptional. Many stayed because they left inspired. The story of the mechanic who survived the impossible and refused to let it define her had traveled farther than she ever expected. In the end, it wasn't the transformation people remembered most. It was the strength she found afterward. Not everyone who walked through the shop doors came because of a broken motorcycle. Some carried injuries no mechanic could repair. Illness.
Loss.
Life-changing experiences that had quietly reshaped who they were. Sam couldn't solve those problems, but she could listen. She understood what it meant to wake up one day and realize life would never return to what it had been. Often, that understanding alone made people feel a little less alone. As the months passed, her mother slowly returned to her old self. She began stopping by the shop several times each week, happily chatting with customers while waiting for Sam to finish work. Whenever someone asked who owned the place, she smiled with unmistakable pride. "My daughter does." The words had once been difficult. Now they came naturally. Her father took longer. Change had never come easily to him, but little by little he found his way back. One afternoon, he stood quietly beside a service bay, watching Sam wrestle with a stubborn transmission. After several minutes, he spoke. "Are you happy?" Sam looked up from beneath the hood, grease covering her hands, but confidence written across her face. "I am." He smiled softly. "Then that's enough for me." Winter brought someone she never expected to see again. Marcus. He stood awkwardly inside the entrance, looking older than she remembered. Time had left its mark on both of them. "I heard your business is doing well," he said. Sam leaned comfortably against the counter. "We're keeping busy." Marcus managed a tired smile. "My shop hasn't been so lucky." He looked around before continuing. "I've lost some good mechanics. It's been hard replacing them." Sam remained silent. She sensed he wasn't finished. After a long breath, Marcus finally admitted the truth. "I was afraid. I let that fear make decisions for me." He met her eyes. "You are the finest mechanic I ever worked with." A faint smile crossed his face. "You probably still are." He paused again. "I'm sorry." The words sounded sincere. "If you'd ever consider coming back." He hesitated. "I'd make you a full partner. Your name would be on the building." Years earlier, hearing those words would have meant everything. Now they simply made Sam smile. "I appreciate that." She spoke gently. "But I've already found where I belong." She extended her hand. "And your apology means more than the offer." Marcus accepted the handshake. When he walked away, neither of them carried resentment anymore. Only understanding. The past had finally lost its hold. Spring brought another unexpected decision. Attorneys contacted her about lawsuits connected to the chemical accident. More victims had come forward. A large legal case was beginning to take shape. After thinking it over carefully, Sam declined. No settlement could return the life she'd once known. She had learned that anger demanded constant attention, and she'd rather spend that energy building something worthwhile. Emma became one of the shop's most familiar faces. During the week, she balanced spreadsheets as an accountant. Every weekend, she traded business clothes for riding gear and joined the Steel Riders on the open road. One afternoon, she looked at Sam and quietly said, "You saved me." Sam smiled and shook her head.
No.
"You found your own way. I just reminded you that it existed." Eventually, the apartment above the bakery became too small. Sam purchased a modest house on the outskirts of Millerville. Nothing extravagant. Just enough room for a workshop, a small yard, and a peaceful life. She discovered gardening almost by accident. Some seasons rewarded her with baskets full of tomatoes. Other times flowers bloomed despite her forgetting to water them often enough. Karen helped carry boxes during the move. While unpacking, she noticed an entire wall covered with photographs. Motorcycle rides. Celebrations at the garage. Family dinners after old wounds slowly began to heal. Hanging among them was Sam's original mechanic's certificate. Samuel Morrison. Karen studied it thoughtfully. "You ever wish none of this had happened?" Sam considered the question while arranging dishes inside a kitchen cabinet. Finally, she answered, "I can't regret something I never had the power to choose." She smiled quietly. "It happened. Spending years wishing it hadn't wouldn't have changed anything. I'd rather spend that time living." Karen laughed. "That's surprisingly wise." Sam grinned. "Turns out life teaches some expensive lessons." Before long, the house became more than simply a place to sleep. It became home for an entire community. The Steel Riders gathered around her dining room table to plan weekend rides. Young mechanics often stopped by asking for advice and somehow stayed through dinner. Her mother visited so often that she eventually started keeping groceries in Sam's refrigerator. It almost felt as though nothing had ever come between them. One peaceful Sunday afternoon, Sam stood inside her garage restoring a vintage Honda motorcycle she bought as a personal project. Her blonde hair rested loosely in a ponytail. Old jeans bore stains from paint and grease. A faded red Steel Riders shirt hung comfortably across her shoulders. The familiar rhythm of turning wrenches, adjusting parts, and solving mechanical puzzles settled her mind in the same comforting way it always had. The familiar rhythm of repairing engines had always brought Sam peace. Late that afternoon, a sedan rolled into the driveway. Rachel climbed out first, followed by her teenage daughter, Sophie, whose excitement was impossible to hide. "So," Sam said with a smile as she wiped the grease from her hands, "ready to get your hands dirty?" Sophie nodded enthusiastically. "Mom says you're the best mechanic around." Sam laughed. "She gives me way too much credit." She tossed Sophie a pair of work gloves. "Let's find out what you can do." The afternoon disappeared beneath open toolboxes and scattered engine parts. Sam explained each wrench, every socket, and why safety mattered before speed. Sophie soaked up every lesson, asking questions almost faster than Sam could answer them. During a short break, Sophie looked up from the workbench. "What made you want to become a mechanic?" Sam thought for a moment before answering. "Machines tell the truth." Sophie tilted her head. "If something breaks, there's always a reason." She picked up a worn gear and turned it in her hands. "You take things apart, understand what failed, then put everything back together." She smiled. "I like that kind of honesty." Sophie nodded thoughtfully. A few moments later, she asked another question. "Mom said you used to look different." Rachel immediately looked uncomfortable. Sam simply smiled. "My appearance changed." She tapped a finger against her chest. But the person underneath didn't. Sophie accepted the answer, without hesitation. "That makes sense." Then she returned to tightening a bolt with complete concentration. As evening settled over the garage, Rachel and Sophie headed home. Sam remained behind, putting tools back into their places one by one. The restored Honda gleamed beneath the workshop lights, waiting patiently for its next ride. Later that night, after a warm shower washed away the grease and dust, Sam caught sight of herself in the bathroom mirror. There was no hesitation anymore. No shock. No sadness. Only recognition. She simply smiled at the woman looking back. Summer arrived with new adventures. Maps soon covered the dining room table, while the Steel Riders planned a cross-country motorcycle tour. Routes stretched across multiple states. Fuel stops, campgrounds, and scenic highways were carefully marked. Emma looked up from one of the maps. "You really think the shop can run without you?" Sam grinned. "That's exactly why I spent years training good people." Karen pointed toward South Dakota. "There's a huge women's motorcycle rally happening while we'll be out there." Sam smiled. "Then that's one more destination." The evening before departure, her parents stopped by. Together they wandered through the garden, checking tomatoes that were nearly ready to harvest. "As always," her mother said, "promise you'll be careful." Sam laughed. "I've been riding motorcycles for years." "I know." Her mother squeezed her arm. "But I'll always worry." When it was time to leave, her father pulled her into a long embrace. "I'm proud of you," he said quietly. Those simple words stayed with her long after their truck disappeared down the road. The next morning dawned bright and cloudless. 6 motorcycles waited outside, fully packed for the journey. Sam settled onto her Harley-Davidson and started the engine. Its familiar rumble filled the morning air. Moments later, the Steel Riders rolled onto the highway together. The landscape changed day by day. Mountains, open plains, quiet towns, endless stretches of winding road. Every mile added another memory. Evenings were spent around campfires beneath wide skies. Stories drifted through the firelight. Some spoke about heartbreak, others about second chances. Every rider carried a journey far deeper than the miles shown on any map. When they reached the South Dakota Rally, thousands of women filled the grounds with motorcycles of every style imaginable. Sam attended workshops, exchanged ideas with shop owners from across the country, and realized her story had become part of something much larger than herself. One afternoon, a magazine photographer approached. If someone suddenly found their entire life turned upside down, they asked, what would you tell them? Sam considered the question before answering. The body is only the machine. She smiled. The person inside is the one steering. You don't always get to choose the road, but you can always choose how you travel it. Months later, those words appeared in print. Soon letters began arriving from strangers. Some described illness. Others wrote about grief, divorce, disability, or unexpected change. Each person recognized a piece of themselves in Sam's journey. Whenever she had time, she answered. Back in Millerville, life settled into a comfortable rhythm once again. The garage stayed busy. Weekend rides never stopped. The garden flourished. Sam occasionally went on dates, never searching desperately for happiness, simply remaining open to whatever life might bring. Not every broken piece had been repaired, but enough had. And for the first time in years, that felt completely sufficient. Some people still stepped away after learning her history. Others became fascinated for reasons that felt more intrusive than genuine. Eventually, Sam learned the difference. She stopped trying to convince everyone to understand her. Instead, she surrounded herself with those who accepted her without conditions. 5 years after the accident, memories of the man she had once been no longer dominated her thoughts. That chapter felt distant, important, but finished. The life she had carefully built afterward felt stronger than anything she had known before. The business continued expanding. Emma eventually joined the company part-time, quietly keeping the finances running smoothly. 2 additional mechanics came aboard, including a young woman who had read Sam's magazine interview and driven across several states, hoping to apprentice under her. Eventually, the garage expanded into a second building. Alongside repairs, they began teaching workshops for aspiring mechanics. During one staff meeting, Dan leaned back with a smile. You've created something remarkable. Sam shook her head. We all built this. Dan smiled knowingly. I only gave you an opportunity. He looked around the busy shop. You turned it into a place where people actually feel like they belong. Sam didn't know how to respond. Instead, she quietly accepted the compliment. Because deep down, she knew it was true. The shop had become more than a successful business. It had become a home for people searching for one. Then winter arrived, bringing another challenge. Her mother's cancer returned. This time it was more aggressive. Sam spent countless evenings sitting beside her hospital bed, talking through old memories, laughing at forgotten family stories, or simply holding her mother's hand in comfortable silence. The distance that had once separated them had long since disappeared. One evening her mother looked toward the window before speaking softly. I'm not afraid anymore. Sam immediately shook her head. Don't talk like that. Her mother smiled gently. You've spent years teaching everyone else how to keep moving forward. She reached for Sam's hand. Now it's my turn. Tears filled Sam's eyes. You've become exactly the person you were always meant to be. She squeezed Sam's hand one last time. And knowing that, her smile remained calm. Gives me peace. Tears blurred Sam's vision. She tightened her grip around her mother's hand. It's not enough, she whispered. I'm not ready. Her mother offered a faint, peaceful smile. You don't have to be. Her fingers gave Sam's hand one last gentle squeeze. But you'll be okay. Early on a quiet Tuesday morning, she slipped away peacefully. Sam remained beside her until the very end. So did her father. Knowing the moment was coming hadn't lessened the pain. When it finally arrived, the silence she left behind felt almost unbearable. Grief settled into everyday life like a constant weight that never completely lifted. The funeral drew far more people than Sam expected. The Steel Riders arrived together, standing shoulder to shoulder in silent respect. The repair shop closed its doors for the day. Flowers filled the chapel. Cards and handwritten letters arrived from customers whose lives her mother had quietly touched over the years. After everyone else had gone home, Sam stood beside her father beneath the fading afternoon sky. His voice was rough with emotion. "She couldn't stop talking about you." Sam looked at him. "Every conversation somehow came back to you." He smiled through tired eyes. "Her daughter."
He paused.
"The mechanic who never gave up on people." Sam lowered her head, unable to speak. Over the next several days, they sorted through the family home together. Closets, boxes, photo albums, entire decades packed carefully into cardboard and fading envelopes. One afternoon, Sam discovered an old photograph. A little boy sat cross-legged on the garage floor, toy trucks scattered around him, hands already stained with grease. For a moment, she barely recognized him. Then she noticed the expression, the curiosity, the determination to understand how every moving part worked. Those things had never disappeared. Only everything around them had changed. Spring arrived slowly. Sam threw herself back into work, letting routine carry her through the hardest days. The training classes at the shop became more popular than ever. Women from neighboring towns signed up to learn in an environment where questions were welcomed instead of dismissed. One afternoon, Rachel smiled across the lunch table. "You know," she said, "you're teaching people a lot more than engine repair." Sam laughed softly. "I thought I was just showing them how motorcycles work." Rachel shook her head.
No.
She smiled warmly. "You're showing them how people survive." Months later, the Steel Riders planned another cross-country ride. This journey carried a different purpose. Tucked safely inside one of the saddlebags rested a small urn containing her mother's ashes. Together they mapped a route through places she had always dreamed of visiting. For part of the trip, Sam's father joined them. He climbed onto the back of her Harley for the first time in years. The miles passed quietly between them. Eventually they reached the edge of the Grand Canyon. The vast landscape stretched endlessly beneath an open sky. The wind moved gently across the cliffs. Her father held the urn carefully, his hands trembling ever so slightly. "She would have loved standing here," he said. Sam gazed across the endless horizon. A small smile touched her face. "I think she still does." Together they opened the urn. The breeze carried the ashes into the canyon, where they drifted higher before disappearing into the immense expanse below. Neither of them spoke. Words felt unnecessary. Watching the ashes become part of the wind somehow felt right. A final journey. Another transformation. Not an ending defined by loss, but by freedom. Sam closed her eyes for a moment, letting the wind brush across her face. When she opened them again, the horizon stretched endlessly before her. For the first time since everything had changed,
She simply let go.